How's it, and welcome to the Volkswagen ID.4. We're going to do a technical review on all the cool tech that's packed into this car, and there is a lot. So for starters, this is the kind of layout you get on the front. You've got a 5-inch screen there and a 12-inch screen there. There are various options. You can get this in a bigger screen, although not available in South Africa at the moment, and that can come in a bigger screen as well. All the buttons on the cockpit here are haptic. So all these buttons, temperature, volume, temperature, the menus, climate, everything here is haptic. Everything on the steering wheel, that side and that side, is haptic. This is all haptic. Even the lock and unlock and the child lock button, all of that's haptic. The window buttons are not haptic. And there's this interesting thing with the door. So when you open the door, you just pull on it lightly, and the door just like pops open. It doesn't like tip like normal doors. So that's actually quite a cool feeling. You kind of just pull on the doors ready to open. So this is the ID.4 Pro, and if I'm not mistaken, it's got a 77 kilowatt hour battery, which is not bad considering you get a 450 kilometer range out of it. That's pretty good. I'm currently at 64%, got 314 left. This car over the last 4,000 kilometers has averaged 18.6 kilowatt hours per 100, which is pretty decent for an electric car. So it's efficient. I've been able to charge it at home, so it's got a socket you plug it into the wall in your garage, and it charges. Overnight, we get about 25 to 35% into the battery, depending on how long you charge it for. You can put on charge for like 8 to 10 hours. That's kind of what you can expect. With the onboard socket, you can get up to 11 kilowatts into this, or kilowatt hours into the charge. So it's quite low, and that's why you can only get like 25 to 30% in there, but it can do up to 170 kilowatt hours if you plug it into a fast charger. Now the fastest chargers we have in South Africa that I know of is 150 kilowatt hours, so you can get the maximum out of that if you stop at one of those. In Europe though, I think you can get up to the 300 kilowatt hours, so this would then just charge at a max of whatever it can charge at. Well, those are kind of your ratings for how quickly you can charge a battery. So the electric motors on this car put all the power to the rear wheels. It has, and I'm unsure about this, I've been trying to work it out. It's either 150 kilowatts or it's 220 kilowatts. I think the ID.4 Pro is 220 kilowatts, could be mistaken, but it does pull really well. Typical electric car style, you step on it and it just powers straight off the line, and it really goes for it. But I want to walk you through everything that we have in the front of this car. One of the annoying things that this thing does is it keeps picking up some kind of trigger word that does this. It keeps asking, it keeps prompting the voice prompt, which is highly annoying, and then you have to stop that. And that would probably pop up 4 or 5 times on your journey. It does support CarPlay, as you can see over there, and part of that is that it's got USB-C ports over here. It's got 2 in the back as well. Both are data ports, so they connect over there, and then obviously you can drop out of CarPlay and you have your general menu. What is interesting is that it pulls whatever audio you're listening to out of CarPlay, which you can get back to by going there. So you'll see Californications on there, and then when you go out, it shows up there. You have this sort of layout in the dash over here. You have a menu item over here which shows your sort of consumption since the start. So I've driven about 8 kilometers now since I've started. For the last 4,000 kilometers, those are the numbers. And since charging, which was I think 2 nights ago, 70 kilowatts, and also a pretty respectable 17.4 kilowatt hours. So all of that kind of lives there. You do have the menu if you press over there. So the interface is very iPhone-like and very sort of CarPlay-ish. There's a big button over here. You press that, it takes you to the sort of dashboards, and then you press that again, it takes you into the menu. Menu has all the sort of usual stuff. You can get straight to CarPlay there, and then all the sort of settings. What is interesting is that there are then some haptic buttons at the bottom here. And they've tried to do some smart stuff in this car. So if you tap climate, for instance, you go to the climate control, right? And those are sort of your standard climate control settings. Nothing too fancy, nothing out of the ordinary. Heated seats, heated steering wheel, blah, 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 blah. If you go to smart climate, it actually tries to give you sort of natural language instructions for what you want. I want to defog my windows, I want to warm my feet, warm my hands, cool my feet, fresh air, rapid cooling, rapid heating, etc. So it's trying to make you think along the lines of like, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? I'll get in the car, my hands are cold, I tap that, it warms my hands, which is essentially going to turn on the heated steering over here. So that's some interesting stuff that they've tried to build into the menus over here. So the first option is your parking menu. You tap that and it brings up all the cameras. You can see how far you are from objects, front and back, gives you some camera views. There's a camera in the front and a camera in the back. which is pretty cool. You have some options in terms of the camera layouts. There are some basic settings, nothing too fancy. You then have the climate view, which I've covered already. You've got some assists over here, and one of the things that they turn on all the time with assists is the lane assist. It comes on every single time you start the car, and you can turn it off over there. It is highly annoying. I don't like it, and there's no simple way to turn it off other than going through the menu multiple times. But there's actually no button on the car to turn that off quickly like there are in some other cars. And then you have a mode button which gives you eco, comfort, sport, and individual. All pretty standard stuff. The individual obviously allows you to set what you want everything to be, so you can do your dynamics as sporty, for instance, but your steering is comfort. You can do the driver's comfort, blah 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 blah. That's all kind of built in there. Eco shows you what eco does. Sport, obviously everything is set to sport. So those are kind of how the menus work and everything that lives inside this vehicle. You can get to some settings. So for instance, if you go to vehicle, it does show you data. This is very similar to the data that lives in the dashboard. It just shows you what's going on. It does show you an instantaneous power consumption. So if you're on the regenerative braking, that goes to a negative. If you brake, that goes all the way to 99.9 kilowatt hours. And then obviously just gives you all that kind of information, status of the car. I think that's the total mileage, etc, etc. There's also a charging information screen here, and you can set the car to either charge to only 80%, or you can set it to charge to 100%. It seems to want to only go to 80%, and it defaults to that even when you set it to 100. I've tried a couple of times at home to get it to 100, and it just seems to want to stop at 80 all the time, which is actually all right. And I think if you're going to own the car long term, that's where you want peak battery to be. Over here you can set, and that's all controlled by the battery care mode, which is literally restricting it to 80%. So that's pretty good. You get bi-directional charging, which means you can take power out of the car. That's pretty useful. And you can reduce the AC current if you don't want to run at like 150 kilowatt hours or 170 and rapid charger. So you've got all those settings. They're all built in here. Radio, media, background does lights. There are some interesting lights here. There's actually a light bar over here on the front. I'm going to show you now. If I put it into gear, that lights up. And then when I put it into park, it lights up again and shows another thing. What I did notice with that bar is you have collision avoidance set up on this car. It's part of the sort of the assists over here. If that thing kicks in, that whole bar lights up a bright red, which is actually pretty cool, just from a visual guide telling you that, hey, you're about to slam into another car and you're about to die. Over here, the gear lever actually lives on the side of this little screen. As I said, there's a 5-inch screen. You press the button on this side to get it into park, and then obviously if you want to change gears, you flick it down to get into reverse, and you flick it up to get into drive. The D stands for drive, the B stands for brake, which is your regenerative brake mode. I like that that is easy to access. Some cars make that a little bit harder to get to. There's like paddles you need to pull, you're never quite sure. This is really clear. Your B lights up there, you've clicked it, you're in regenerative mode, and it regens on the braking, it regens when you lift off, etc. Okay, so like a few last things about this screen over here. I'm going to take you back to CarPlay because that's where you can see it the best. This screen is actually a really high definition screen. So the standard comes with a 12-inch screen, which is this one. There is a 12.9 option, which we're not getting in South Africa at the moment, but it does exist. It has a resolution of 1920 by 869. So 1920 across, 869. It's almost a full HD screen squeezed into this little package over here. That's pretty impressive, but it gets better because it's got 175 ppi. So that's really sharp graphics that you get in there. Everything is really small. It almost looks a little bit like a retina screen. You can't really see pixels, and it's such a quality premium feel on the front of this car. Like I really like this screen. And that's pretty much all the tech that's built into this car. There are more things, especially around the CAN bus, but I'm not going to bore you guys with all of that. Around the CAN bus and the wiring looms and the network, they actually use a lot of network cables, and they've used an entirely new software system to build into this CAN bus and connect all the aspects of the car, the Bluetooth, the USB-C, etc. So that's been a really fascinating thing, that VW have moved away from the way they used to do CAN buses, and they've actually developed an entirely new system, which apparently is better, it's more secure, less likely to be hacked so that they can gain access to other areas of the car. But overall, this is a really solid electric car, and I've really enjoyed my week with it. If you've enjoyed this video and if you're into tech, make sure to check out rocking.io. We have a whole tech community where we talk about stuff like this, and yeah, feel free to jump in and chip along. One last little nugget before I leave you is the brake pedals are the coolest brake pedals I've ever seen on a car. There is a pause and play button on the pedals. I just love fun little things like that.